Hi, and welcome to another episode of the End of the World Book Club. If you're unfamiliar with the concept, this is my little apocalyptic and dystopian book club where I pick a different book every month and then talk about it on my channel, and you are of course more than welcome to read along. I've also decided that I'm going to be doing 2 books per video from now on, so I'm going to save it up for 2 months and then make a video about the 2 books from the previous 2 months. Basically because, let's be honest, life is busy, I have a full-time job, and this gives me a little bit more wiggle room to catch up on a book if I don't manage to read it in that exact month. So in October and November I read The Power by Naomi Alderman and The Knife of Never Letting Go. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I'm 2/3 into The Knife of Never Letting Go, but I am about to go on holiday for like 2 weeks and then the year is gonna be over. Right, so The Power by Naomi Alderman, this is a book that I have been wanting to read for so long. It won the Bailey's Prize for Fiction. This is the paperback, which has really grown on me actually. I like the retro look. So what I knew about this book before I started reading is that it is about young girls developing this power to basically give electric shocks, and that really changes the power balance in the world. That's about all I knew, and that is pretty much spot on. The book starts when this is all sort of kicking off. Obviously this is one of those things that's not going to happen to one girl and everyone's going to find out immediately. It sort of starts spreading around the world, and as it starts spreading, more girls realize that they have this power, and then they can also spread it to the older women by sort of teaching them, because they all have this organ, which I think it feels like it's kind of here. It's called a skin, and that's where the power comes from. You follow lots of different kinds of characters, and it's about all the different ways that it affects their lives, and because of that it has so many different interesting elements to it. So there's a girl from Ireland who's part of like a criminal family. Those chapters actually really reminded me of The Glorious Heresies, which won the Bailey's Prize the year before. And then there is this woman who is working in the US government, and her daughter has it as well. There's a girl who is in foster care who then runs away and starts this religious cult. And all the way through it is counting down to a certain event. So it will say like 8 years to go, 5 years to go. And I think when I started reading this, I definitely expected it to be an even more dystopian setup than it is. I just sort of expected things to get completely out of hand, like right off the bat. But when you read this, it does also convince you that this is kind of what would happen. So there would immediately be regulations on it. Obviously people would use it to grab power, but then also there's this wish to sort of pretend maybe like it's not as powerful as it is, to make sure that women don't get like captured and rounded up. And also there was definitely a moment in here that gave me one of those rushes that I got from watching Wonder Woman in the cinema. It's just like seeing something that you haven't seen that much before. The idea that you could walk home by yourself in the middle of the night and not have to feel any fear. There was probably more political stuff in it that I am personally interested in. There's this country where the political situation kind of gets very complicated. There's a lot of focus on that, and I think there's definitely some characters where I would have loved to just read their full story and like have a whole book about that. I don't want to give away too many spoilers about what happens, but I think what is almost one of my favorite things is that if you have read The Handmaid's Tale, you know there's like those historical documents in the back of it. There's something fairly similar in here. It's a letter from a male author writing to someone called Naomi. The author's name of this book is Naomi, and he's writing from the Men's Writers Association, and it's basically him going, oh, I've written this book, do you think it's any good? And her coming back and saying, oh, well, there's some things that are not quite believable. And then there's another couple of letters in the back of the book. When you read this, you're definitely not going to miss the message of this book. It is pretty clear. And the letters at the beginning and the end are so over the top, and it is really funny to read. Also, I think this would make for a really good companion read next to The Handmaid's Tale. So I read that earlier this year, and I would definitely recommend sort of reading those side by side. Okay, we're moving on to The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. I thought I would never get around to reading this book. I've had it for so long. It's part of a series of 3 books, the Chaos Walking trilogy, and I've just heard so many fantastic things about this book. It's quite a big one. Also, this is like a special edition cover. I don't know if you can see it, but it has like reflective bits, so it looks like it's like shattered glass. I feel like if I had known more about the book, I probably would have read it earlier. I've just been sitting on the tube and enjoying it so much and then totally forgetting where I am. It's about a boy called Todd who lives in Prentice Town, and there's this thing in the town, or in the whole world, where all men have this thing called noise, or the noise, and it means that all of their thoughts are sort of projected outside of them. You can hear it and you can see some of it, and it is really hard to control, although you can sort of cover up part of your noise with another bit of noise. And in this town there's only men. Something terrible happened. They all got a virus that created this noise. There were these creatures on the planet called Speckle, and they gave them the virus. All the women died. That is all Todd knows. And he's also really close to becoming a man when he turns 14. He doesn't quite know what that entails, but then one day he comes across a bit of quiet on the outside of the town, and that just seems kind of impossible. When he tells the two men that care for him, they basically give him a backpack and say, run. Because everyone in the town is obviously immediately going to find out that he noticed that, because they're going to hear it in his noise. And that is where the story begins. There's been so many dystopian books and so many different worlds, and sometimes when I hear pitches for them, I'm like, okay, I see where this is going, or okay, that sounds like a bunch of other books I've already heard. But this is a really cool setting. It was actually published in 2008, so quite a while ago. I think it is the characters and the writing that really make this book what it is. One of my favorite characters is Manchi, who is his dog, and the thing about noise is that you can also hear the animals speak. So squirrels just talk about nuts and trees, but the dog has a bit of personality, and he only speaks in like 1 or 2 words at a time. But it is both adorable and heartbreaking at the same time, and then also quite funny. And the other element that I really loved about this is that it feels like it has that American frontier feeling. If you like Westworld, this is quite a good match as well. But also if you like sci-fi where there's like people settling on a new planet, this is good for you. I've been through quite a bit of adventure already, but I'm still at a point where the main character hasn't discovered the full truth about what the actual history is. Like, obviously he's been lied to, but he doesn't quite know the full truth yet. But the other thing I wanted to show is the way that they show the noise in the book. So usually it's just like 1 or 2 bits in a sentence, but that's hard to see. So here you can see an example of someone's noise. So I'm definitely going to read the full trilogy. I have absolutely been loving this, and it's going to be a film next year. So that's it for now. I did have a book planned for December, but I think I'm going to save it until January. It is Blindness, and I'll put a link to it in the description. If you want to stay updated on the End of the World Book Club, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I usually talk about the book when I'm reading it or when I'm announcing what the different titles are going to be a couple of months in advance. If you have read either of these books, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on them. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Doei!